Have you been checking out container gardens on YouTube and come across the SIPs, or the Self Irrigated Planters? Have you wondered how much those things cost to set up? Well, pull out your paper and pencil, because today we are going to take a look at the costs associated with setting a few of these up. Howdy y'all, I'm Sherilyn, and I want to thank you all for stopping by. Today we're going to take a look at the cost of setting up a couple of self-irrigated planters. Stick around to the end and we will give you a total of what it costs to set up two of these. The first thing that you're going to need are containers. Now you can do the SIP method in a lot of different containers. I use cat litter buckets to grow herbs, and they're a perfect size, and they're great for growing oregano and basil and many other different things. You can also use the large rectangular totes. Of course, the sturdier, the better. But for today, we're not going to take a look at those. We're going to take a look at two other common containers that we use for self-irrigated planters. One are the protein tubs that you can get from cattle ranchers, and the other are 55-gallon food-safe barrels. So today we're actually going to look at the cost of setting up two planters. They'll either be two protein tubs, or you're going to get one 55-gallon barrel, and you're going to cut that in half so that you get two containers. I am in South Texas. I'm about an hour west of San Antonio. So for me to be able to obtain the 55-gallon barrels, I do need to go into San Antonio. I can get those for $25 a barrel. Cut them in half, we're looking at $12.50 a container. I base my price on what I'm willing to pay a cattle rancher for his tubs, based upon what I can get a comparable container out of the 55-gallon barrels. So a 55-gallon barrel cost me $25, so I'm looking at $12.50 a container. The cattle tubs, even though that they are designed to be outside in the weather, heat, rain, cold, doesn't make a difference, they are still not going to last as long as a container using the 55-gallon barrels. Therefore, I am not going to pay the same price per tub for a protein tub than I would for the half of a 55-gallon barrel. So I've got $12.50 per container in a barrel. The top I'm going to pay for a protein tub is about $10. Here in the San Antonio-ish area, I have purchased the tubs anywhere from $7 to $10, which I feel is a fair market price for those. The next thing we need to take a look at is the water reservoir. Now, if you look on the internet underneath these self-irrigated planters, people do use a lot of other different things to create their reservoir. I use 4-inch drain pipe, and because I'm creating a number of these at this particular point in time, I buy in bulk. I buy 100 feet of this stuff at a time. But for the sake of this video, to give you an idea of what just setting up a couple of these is going to be, we're going to take a look at a 10-foot section of this 4-inch drain pipe. I get it at Lowe's. It's usually outside in the garden center. My Lowe's has it against a back wall. You can get a 10-foot section, and it's going to run you about $15. Now you do have a choice. You have a choice of solid tubing, or you can get the kind with perforations. Now you're going to cut this to different lengths, and then you're going to put landscape cloth over the end of it so that dirt doesn't get in. So I don't buy the perforated because of that reason. I don't want to have to sleeve the entire pipe. Now you can get pipe and you can get sleeves. If you want to go that route, that's fine. And some people have used the perforated and had absolutely no problems with dirt getting in. But again, for the sake of this illustration, I buy a 10-foot section of non-perforated pipe. Runs me about $15. I'm going to get two containers out of that 10-foot section, so we're looking at $7.50 per container. Now I can get that 10-foot pipe in my SUV from front to back in the vehicle. I usually just put it up over the seat and it hits the front dash. But don't despair if you've got kind of like a sedan or a smaller type of vehicle. This tubing is actually flexible, so you can put it in the back seat on one side, bend it around, and just slam the door closed. You should have no problem at all being able to get a 10-foot section of this stuff home if you don't have an SUV or a truck to pick it up. After you get your containers, you're going to need to fill it with a potting mix. That's just usually a peat-based soil, not something that you would put in your garden. You want something specifically for containers, and most of the time that's going to have a higher peat content. I create my own soil, so I actually, while I'm at Lowe's getting my pipe, you can go out and get a 3 cubic foot bale of your peat moss. This is running me right now about $20, and I can actually get 2 containers out of one 3 cubic foot bale. This is going to give you about $10 in your peat moss per container. While you're at Lowe's, you're also going to need to pick up some PVC pipe. Now, I've tried a couple of various sizes. I buy 3/4 inch. It's easy enough to water down the 3/4 inch, and eventually I'm going to have a drip hose where it's going to go down into that, and so that'll work fine for that. 1 inch is nice. You can usually put your hose down into the top of that, and that's fine if you want to pay the extra little bit to get that bigger pipe. Don't get the 1/2 inch. I have a lot of 1/2 inch around here, and I tried that initially, but it's really too small. As you're putting water in, there's air kind of coming out, and it just causes problems, and you usually can't put water in at a decent speed, so it takes you longer to fill the bottom of your container. So just don't go down that road. Don't get 1/2 inch. Get yourself 3/4 inch. Currently, my 3/4 inch PVC pipe is running about $6.30 per 10-foot section. I cut the 10-foot stick down into 2-foot sections to put into the containers as a fill pipe. Therefore, I'm going to get about 5 fill tubes with each 10-foot section that I cut. Taking 2-foot sections, so 4 feet of that 10-foot section of PVC piping is going to run you $2.52 out of the total to be used on these containers. In addition to the peat moss you're going to put in your containers, you're going to need to add something to lighten that up and improve drainage, and I use perlite. I get my perlite in large 4 cubic foot bags, and I find that I go through it. If you're a gardener, it just makes sense to get the bigger bags. It's pretty reasonable when you compare it to getting a bunch of smaller bags. And again, you're just going to go through it. In addition to using it for the SIPs, I mixed it with coco coir and used it to create my own seed starting mix in the spring. Initially, when I looked to get the perlite in bulk, I went to Amazon. And I just pretty much bought whatever the cheapest stuff was that was out there. It just so happened that one of the orders that I placed came, and it was actually from Home Depot. So when it came time for me to reorder my perlite, I compared the Amazon price and the Home Depot price, and I found that Home Depot was considerably less, and they gave me free shipping. So this last time, I went ahead and just ordered direct, and I actually got it quicker than I would have had I ordered it off of Amazon. I paid $47 for a 4 cubic foot bag. The 4 cubic feet bag of perlite that we got works out to about 28.5 pounds of perlite. This converts to 453 ounces. When I measure out my perlite, I actually have a bleach bottle that I've cut the end off of it, and I use the handle and the open end as my scoop. And for the most part, I'm using about 4 of those scoops per wheelbarrow, which contains half a bag of peat moss. So that's kind of my recipe on doing these. So 4 scoops of the perlite per container is what I'm using. Each one of those scoops, I got a big bowl, I teared it out, measured it out. That's running you about 10 ounces per scoop. So you're looking at about 40 ounces of perlite per container. Doing the math, you have $47 divided by the 453 ounces, and that's going to come out to about 10 or 11 cents per ounce. Since each container uses about 40 ounces of perlite, you're looking at $4, maybe $5, because sometimes you'll look at it and say, I just want a little bit more of this stuff in there. So a good rule of thumb is probably $4 to $5 per container worth of perlite. If you are doing a number of SIPs, you're going to actually be able to get 10 to 11 containers out of that one 4 cubic foot bag of perlite. You are also going to need something to cap off the ends of your drain pipes. I started out with using like a shade cloth type of material because I had a little bit of that on hand, but I have since moved to a landscape fabric. You can get landscape fabric in different grades. I got a 3-foot wide section, and again, because I'm doing a number of these, I ended up buying it in a 50-foot length. A 50-foot length has given me a lot of containers, and I actually still have a little bit left still to cut up. So doing the math on the landscape fabric, 3-foot by 50-foot is going to give me 150 square feet of fabric. And I ran that through a converter that you can get these things online to determine how many square inches I got, and that was 21,600. Divided the $24 that we paid for it by the 21,600, and that's giving me 0.0011. That's the cost per square inches of this stuff. I make my squares 7.5, 8 inches, let's call it 8 inches. So an 8 by 8 square is 64 square inches of fabric. That I'm going to need 6 of those per container, so 6 times the 64 is 384 square inches. Multiply that by the 0.0011, and that is going to give you 43 cents per tub in your landscape fabric. In order to attach your landscape fabric to the end of your drain tube, you're going to need zip ties. You're going to need at least 18 inches in length to go all the way around your 4-inch pipe. I get those off of Amazon. I buy them 100 at a time, and they're only $10 per 100, so 10 cents a piece. It ends up where you have 3 pieces or 3 different lengths of the drain tube in the bottom of your container, and so that makes 6 ends you're going to need to have covered up. So that's going to bring you up to 60 cents per container in your zip ties. Now, in addition to having basically your containers, the soil that goes in it, your drain pipe, and something to cap off the drain pipe, you're going to need tools to work with all of this. Hopefully you have some of this stuff on hand. If not, it shouldn't be too expensive to pick some of this stuff up. For cutting the drain pipe, honestly, all you need is a bread knife. The stuff is not super thick. I know there's going to be guys that probably do jigs and use power tools. You don't need any of that, seriously. A nice bread knife is all you need to cut through this stuff. And then I end up having a pocket knife that I kind of use anytime I get a rough edge to pull those off. I just kind of shave those off. So if you don't have a bread knife, they shouldn't be too expensive. You can pick one up. And, it's always handy to use those things in the kitchen. Using a bread knife to cut your pipe is not going to ruin the bread knife. You can wipe it off, run it through a dishwasher, wash it off, and still use it in the kitchen to cut your bread. For cutting your landscape fabric, a regular pair of scissors is just fine. The landscape fabric I got had little dots on it, little perforations, and basically I just used the scissors and connected the dots, and I was able to get relatively straight lines. It's not rocket science. It's a little crooked. It's not a big deal. You can use your scissors to cut your zip ties, but you're going to find that using scissors, those zip ties are kind of tough. You might end up dulling your scissors, and they actually take a little bit more work. What I have found that works quite nicely on the zip ties is a little hobby pair of side cutters, little wire cutters. You can find these little cutters in the hobby craft section of a Walmart. You're going to look for where you have supplies to make jewelry because they're those little hand-sized wire snippers, and they're perfect for cutting zip ties. We use zip ties around here to band up our birds, to differentiate what pens they come in, to help ID the birds, so at a distance I can get, I can take notes about who I like, who I don't like, and things like that. So we use colored zip ties. And these little wire snippers are just really easy to snap these zip ties off, whether they're the small little bitty ones or for using around these drain pipes. They're going to be a little heavier duty. They're perfect for snipping those things off. Hopefully you already have a drill. If you do, you're just going to need a 1/2-inch drill bit for making your drill holes. I just recently picked up one of those because I have quite a few of the SIPs, and we have plans to do quite a few more. 1/2-inch hole is usually what people recommend, and with the type of downpours we can get at times, where we can get like 4 inches an hour, that's a lot of water to pour into a container. I previously just had a 1/4-inch regular drill bit, And because it seemed to be kind of small in case we got those torrential rains, I ended up just putting a bunch of holes horizontally. So if you have a drill and you have a drill bit, 1/4 inch, and that's all you have, you really don't need to buy anything else. Just make sure that you put a couple of drainage holes so that if you do get kind of a deluge of water, the water will be able to drain out fairly quickly and not leave your containers soaking wet and possibly drowning out your plants. For cutting your PVC, you can use any number of things. Because we go through quite a bit of PVC here, I actually have cutters specifically designed to cut up to 2-inch PVC. We raise poultry, and I went through adding automatic waterers into all my pens, and it just made sense to have a proper tool to very quickly cut through the PVC and just be done with it. If you happen to have a hand saw, like a circular saw, or you have a jigsaw, those work just fine as well. If you don't have any of the rest of that stuff and you don't want to buy any of that stuff, I would recommend you getting a hacksaw, but get one of those hacksaws that come with the little box for cutting trim, right? It's like you can cut the different angles with that particular box. It'll guide the blade of your hacksaw. The PVC needs to be cut at an angle on one end, so having that little box where you can put the PVC and pull it tight against one side, run your blade through the notches, and you can get yourself a really nice cut on your PVC with that type of apparatus. Again, it's not going to cost you very much. And if it ends up where you really like the SIPs, you're going to have it handy for creating a few more. If you are finding this information helpful, please hit the thumbs up button so that the YouTube algorithm will send this out to more people. Hitting the thumbs up will tell YouTube that you like the content, and it will share it with more people. And of course, it tells us what you like seeing so that we can go ahead and create more content that you're going to love to view. Now that we have taken a look at what the costs are of everything that goes into making a couple of SIP containers, let's do a quick recap and total everything up. 2 containers are going to run you anywhere from $14 to $25. Let's take the worst case scenario and go with the $25 price point on that. A 3 cubic foot bag of peat moss is going to run you $20. Perlite is $47. That is a bulk buy, and you are getting 4 cubic feet of perlite in one bag. A 10-foot length of 4-inch drain pipe is $17. A 10-foot stick of 3/4 inch PVC is running $6.30. For the 18-inch zip ties, a bag of 100 is $10. The landscape fabric, which is 3 foot by 50 feet, is going to run $24. Buying everything to get started with a couple of SIPs is $149.30. But we are not using everything we bought for just these 2 containers. Breaking things down further, for the perlite, we're only using $10 of the total for the 2 containers. The amount of 3/4 inch PVC pipe that we used is only $2.52. The 12 zip ties are going to cost you $1.20. Landscape fabric for the 2 containers is going to only run you about 40 to 50 cents. So the grand total for creating 2 containers is $76.14. That brings your total per tub to $38.07. Wow, that's a lot, isn't it? Or is it? Let's compare the cost of setting up some SIPs to the cost of setting up a raised bed. The tubs we use to create the SIPs are about 22 inches across, so for the sake of easy math, let's just call them 2 feet. A typical size raised bed for most people is 4 foot by 8 foot. That is going to translate to about 8 self-irrigated planters. The height on these tubs is about 17 inches, so let's make our raised bed 18 inches in height. To create a raised bed that is 4 feet by 8 feet by 18 inches, you are going to need 9 2 by 6 by 8 foot treated lumber boards to create this 4 foot by 8 foot by 18 inch raised bed. In my local area, the cost of these boards is $8. So you're going to have $72 in the construction of the raised bed. The nice thing about filling taller raised beds is you can actually use yard waste like leaves and branches and small branches, small logs, twigs to fill up the bottom 4 to 5 inches of your planter. And then you're going to put your soil over the top of that. That stuff on the bottom allows you to take up some room and usually isn't going to cost you anything, especially if you're using waste from around your yard. On top of the sticks and everything we have in the bottom, we're going to want to put 12 inches of soil. I priced raised bed potting mix at my local Lowe's, and for a 1.5 cubic foot bag, it is running about $10 per bag. You are going to need 22 bags of those to get this 12 inches in depth, so you're looking at an additional $220. Now when you start adding soil to the bed, some of that is going to sift down through all that stuff you have in the bottom, so it is probably going to take you more than 22 bags. That said, you can add in less expensive options like some black cow. You can add in some compost, less expensive bags of soil to kind of add the volume without quite the cost. But you're not going to get away from paying anywhere from $200 to $300 to set up a 4x8 by 18 inch raised bed. To set up a comparable size garden with the SIP containers, you're going to need 8 of those. It's going to run you $304.56. Now, of course, there's ways to shave a little bit off of that. We chose the most expensive container option, and we didn't take into consideration buying in bulk with your PVC as well as your drain pipe. So you can get these down a little bit from that price as well. The biggest cost in any garden is your initial setup. As you can see, the SIPs and the raised beds are comparable as far as setup costs. And although the self-irrigated planters are a little bit more initially to set up and get going, the beauty of the self-irrigated planters is over time, the cost to water your plants and keep them doing well is actually going to be less. So, are the self-irrigated planters worth the extra time and money to set up? Well, take a look at a previous video we did where we looked at a couple of things that you need to consider when you're setting up a garden. And at the end, we gave our opinion on using these for the first time this year. As always, we appreciate you stopping by, and we sure hope to see you again on the next one. Bye, y'all.